Hello and welcome back to the Full Court Frequency Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Hollenbeck, and this is episode number 4. Today we have a very special guest, Ben Bohl, who's currently an assistant coach at Bishop Ryan High School right now. Before that, Ben also played at Bishop Ryan High School and had a very good basketball and football career, and then transitioned to play at Minot State as a hometown kid and actually played with me for 2 years. So I'm very close with Ben. We had a lot of fun in our playing days. On top of that, he had some strong performances throughout his career, including a career high 19 points multiple times and knocking down 5 threes in a game. Before that, he was a standout at Bishop Ryan, like I said earlier. Now he's back, giving back to the game, helping develop the next group of players going through Bishop Ryan. He, as a coach, deals with a lot of college coaches reaching out to him, asking him about his current players. There's a long line of good basketball players that go through Bishop Ryan, so a lot of college coaches do reach out, and he deals a lot with coaches recruiting and players, their thought process behind the recruiting process and NIL. First off, thanks, Ben, for taking time out of your busy schedule to make this happen. I look forward to having a good conversation with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a long time coming. I've always told myself if I was going to do a podcast, you'd be one of the first episodes just because your knowledge for the game, the path you took. And yeah, I'm going to start out just by take me through your journey from Bishop Ryan to playing at Minot State. What went through that with the recruiting process and what made you want to stay home for your collegiate career?
So I think I'll start with the question you asked on what was the recruiting process like?
Yeah.
Because I think my recruiting process was a little different than maybe some of the other athletes that were on the team. So I started out playing at Bishop Bryan, as you stated earlier, and I kind of always had a close connection with Minot State basketball, being from Minot, going to their camps, year after year, summer camps, their individual team camps in high school, and then um, even playing in their basketball tournaments. Minot State was always kind of a place where basketball sprouted for me, I guess you could say, where I was introduced, where I fell in love with the game. So my recruiting process in high school wasn't very long in my humble opinion. Um, I kind of knew where I wanted to go from a pretty early age. My father played at Minot State, so mine had always felt like home. The dome where the Beavers play felt like home. And going into my last year of AAU, I got some interest from other schools around North Dakota and into Minnesota, but I made my decision pretty early in that recruiting cycle of your final year, going into your senior year of high school basketball, and I committed early early June in that year. Um, so my recruiting experience was just kind of being around the game my whole life at Minot State and having my dad go there, like kind of continue a legacy there. And that's kind of where that started, and that's how it ended. And then
Yeah.
what was the second question?
You pretty much covered it, that whole thing. I will say, like, I do see a trend in the community with that where there's a lot of good Minot high school basketball players want to stay home, and carry on that tradition of being a Beaver. There's a lot of pride in this community when it comes to not only basketball, but other sports as well. I guess transitioning into the next question kind of set the stage for us. I always like asking this to players that transition from the high school level to the college level. What was your welcome to college basketball moment when you realized it was a different level? Like, was there a specific time where you're like, "Oh crap, like this is what it's going to be the next 5 years of my career"?
Yeah, my welcome to college basketball moment was our first preseason practice. I get into the gym. We're running a very simple, looking back,
Right.
very simple drill. And um, I think I messed up a few times. And our coach at the time just started yelling at me like, "Well, you can't do this. This is such a high school move." Um, just kind of going on and on about that. And you don't hear that in high school, right? Your coaches aren't at that elite level of coaching where everything needs to be done the right way. And from that point on, I kind of knew it was a different beast that you had to attack. So my mindset shifted in that first year for sure, but that was my welcome to basketball, college basketball moment.
Yeah. And did you feel like you kind of thrived off that towards the end of your career? Like, did it bother you a bunch in the moment when that happened, or do you feel like you adapted pretty quickly into being able to, have some tough skin with some of these college coaches?
Yeah, I think initially it's just a shock, right? It's a shock to your system. You've never been coached in a way where they're not necessarily screaming at you, complaining about you, but they're trying to coach you at a different level with a different sense of intensity. As I progressed in my college career, it was pay less attention to how it's delivered, but what the message is. So, as I got older and more mature in basketball, I could differentiate from the message and how it's being said. And I think that helped me a lot in my college basketball career, just being able to take the information and throw out the delivery.
Yeah. And one thing when I first became teammates with you, it was I understood very quickly that you are very elite at doing whatever you can to get on the court and playing a certain role. Like, no offense here, but at your size and with your athleticism, your skills off the charts, you can shoot the ball at a very high clip and you're a very tough defensive player, but you don't have necessarily those God-given abilities where you're 6'8" jumping out of the gym and the fastest player on the court. And I always gave you credit. You were always on the court, and that was for a reason. What do you think separated yourself from other guys that may have had those God-given abilities and athleticism and stuff like that?
I think my attention to detail as I grew as a basketball player, actually, I would even say from my redshirt freshman year going into my redshirt or to my actual freshman year, I guess, of playing, my attention to detail to scout and to different actions that teams were running, my attention to offensive plays, offensive sets, like all that stuff had to be elevated because I had to be in the spot before the opposing team got there on offense or, working to get catches against the defense, right? Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think my ability to like watch the film, grow from it, do it in practice, polish it up before the game. Like that was one thing that I feel like set me apart, knowing tendencies of certain players I was going to guard. All that stuff plays into a big factor of things to get onto the college basketball floor when you're, a 6'3" guard that can shoot it. Maybe he didn't have the best shooting years his first 2 years, but it was those other things that kept me on the floor. Like you couldn't afford not to play the guy who was going to be able to guard and not have to worry about him. You knew he was going to be all right. He was going to do the right thing.
Yeah. I think you always like, if I had to put it pretty simply, you always forced our coach to play you. You always did like without like I always say like everyone at that level can score the basketball. It's what you can do without the basketball in your hands that really separates you. And I had my brother on earlier on the past episode, and we were discussing kind of like just how difficult it is. If we think about what are you, 6'3"?
Yep.
6'3" guard can play 1 through 3. There's a lot of you out there. It's kind of a dime a dozen. There are so many guards out there compared to guys that are 6'8", 6'9". There's not a lot of tall people out there. So you have to be able to separate. The margin for error for a guard at the next level is so small that you almost have to be perfect on the court. And I always thought you at least tried to do that and you excelled in that. So credit to you. I do want to get into now, after Minot State, kind of transitioning into a coaching role. When did you know you wanted to get into coaching, and where does that kind of influence come from?
Well, I didn't really know if I wanted to get into coaching after I graduated. I think it was always in the back of my mind. I don't think it was ever something I was set on doing. Like after I'm done with basketball, I know I'm going to go coach at a high school or at a college. It was more of I got done with basketball. Um, the summer went on, and then I got an opportunity to coach at my old school, Bishop Bryan. And I didn't have a lot going on in the winters, so I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to get back into the gym at Bishop Bryan, give back to the school a little bit. I knew some of the players, I knew some of them had college basketball interests, and like I feel like I could help the team in that sense, you know, teaching them what it takes to be a college basketball athlete, but also just a college athlete, because there were other kids on the team not going to play basketball, but college athletics in general. And then obviously like love of the game, like
Yeah.
I just love competing. Like I love the team aspect. Um, it's just something that's very hard to get away from when you've been doing it your whole life. I don't know right now if I could say I would stop coaching just because I didn't feel like it. Like that competition aspect, that going to work every day aspect, seeing kids grow, like that's the most satisfying thing, I think, especially in the high school sense, is like you have these small freshmen that come in, and then I know I've been there 2 years, but even like my freshmen from last year, how much they've grown, it's just so cool to see, you know?
Mm.
So, going back to the original question, why I wanted to start, just kind of something pulled me to it, right? It was kind
Yeah.
of an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Yeah. Part of me a little bit, like at least for me, when I found out you were coaching, the first thing I kind of went to was I remember your junior year at Minot, you had broken your finger against Dickinson State in an exhibition. And after that, you didn't necessarily like sit at the bottom of the bench in street clothes. Our head coach basically made you an assistant for the next couple days, and you were like at the head of the bench, like basically coaching. Could you say that's where you almost like dipped your feet into it a little bit and found out like, oh, like there's a reason he sat me up here and I kind of enjoy doing this?
Now that you like say that, I've thought about that before, but now that you say it in that like in that form, there probably was a reason I was up there with him.
Yeah.
I think part of that reason was that I knew what our game plans were,
Yep.
and I knew how to guard different actions, and I could see things on the floor, and I would speak up. So I think that's probably very fair in what you're saying.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I probably didn't realize like dang, like I want to do this.
Yeah. No, for sure. Now, this next question I'm always interested in. What's been the hardest part about going from player now to coach?
Oh my gosh. What
Where do
isn't
you
hard
start?
about being a coach?
Yeah.
Hardest thing for me, I don't think it's hard, but the most challenging thing, I'll say that, is you have to coach different
Mhm.
personalities. And my personalities, I can be coached hard, and I want to coach kids hard. Like that's what I want. Like I want to be able to motivate them in a hard way, right? Like make their skin a little thicker.
Yeah.
Can't do that with every player you have, right? You're
Right.
gonna have some kids that come from, different backgrounds, different home lives. And you got to be more sensitive with those kids. And then you have kids who like want to be coached that way and like respond well. So I think the biggest challenge for me is seeing how players respond to the coaching and then working off of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's probably the biggest challenge. And then another challenge in high school is you don't have all the time in the world to do what you want to do. You got to get in there hour and a half, 2 hours, and then you got to get out. And you don't get your whole preseason like you do in college to teach everything. So just how fast things have to go in the high school game is a big challenge as well because you need to be able to put your defense in, your sets in, press break. I mean, we break it down from the college level, like you're doing different free throw box outs, different jump balls, at the beginning
Yep.
of the game, end of game situations. Like a lot of those things you don't get to spend a lot of time on. And so that's another big challenge in being a high school coach is, you know, what are you focusing on every day, and what are you going to keep consistent every day, and what are the other drills you're going to supplement those consistencies with?
Yeah, love that. Now, I want to kind of switch gears here and kind of move on to the next segment. This podcast is a lot about NIL and recruiting. I do want to stick with recruiting for right now at the collegiate level. We talked a little bit about your process and what happened going into your decision. As a high school coach, you do now see it from a different lens with talking to college coaches about your players. College coaches trust high school coaches with advice when they ask, what they think of one of their players. When a college coaches come to watch your practices or even get on the phone with you, what are they really looking for in a player? What are they kind of asking about your players to see if they are able to play at the next level?
Well, I think every college coach is a little has a different approach to their, recruiting wants and needs, or their player wants and needs. But I think I think the one constant is that kid a hard worker, and is he a gym rat? Is he in the gym? What is he doing in the off season? Is he a good teammate? Um, like those are the attributes that a college coach is always looking for, from what I've experienced.
Hmm.
So I think when you get on those calls with coaches, their main question is gym rat, does he compete, and is he a good teammate? Like what is he doing on the floor and off the floor? Um, so that's probably one of the main things that I've noticed from talking to coaches.
Yeah. One thing you brought up there that I really liked was, is he a good teammate? I think that's a huge part of the recruiting process for college coaches when they go to a game or watch film. They're not necessarily watching, the skill level and stuff like that. They can tell pretty early in the process whether he can make it at the next level, but I think they really like key in on how he's treating his teammates, what his body language is like, because if there's problems with attitude, being a bad teammate or bad body language, whatever it may be, like that's just not going to cut it at the next level. Like you're just not going to make it regardless of the level, D3, NAI, D2, D1, it's going to be tough for that kid to really move the needle as far as wins go.
Yeah, and I think like another thing too is when you get to that college level, like you can be taught so much more. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I think there's just intangibles in coaching. Like when you're recruiting a player, like these are the things that I have to get out of this player that I'm recruiting. All the other stuff, like I will coach them. Like we'll find a way to figure that out. But you can't figure out how to be a good teammate. Like if you're working on that, you're a step behind. You know what I mean?
Hmm. No, I agree. Now, a little bit here, I want to talk about just your personal experience and just your opinions here, because when you played, NIL was like just starting out, and it hadn't reached the D2 level at the time when we played together at Minot State. So that was never a thought process for us, I don't think. I never really thought of it until I reached the Division 1 level. But what are your opinions about NIL? Do you think it's taking basketball in the right direction, the wrong direction? Do you think kids are thinking about it too much? Just give me your broad opinion right now where you think the stage of college basketball is in right now with the NIL world.
It's such a tough question because, you give kids opportunities to play the game that they love and, be paid or compensated for their athletic ability. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's way harder on the coaches because now you're going year in, year out. If a kid has a good year, he's gone.
Yep.
Um, if he has a bad year, he might even be gone just because of the portal, right? If they're not getting enough minutes. So it's a big challenge for coaching right now. And, it can have an adverse effect on the players too, because they may get in a situation where, they're not happy with their decision and they were happier with where they were at. But it's just a risk. It's like business, it's a risk that you're going to have to be willing to take. And, if you want to bet on yourself to move up or move down, and if you think that's the best situation for you, then you should go bet on yourself. But if you're happy with where you're at and you maybe give that college team, you know, hey, I'll stay, but do you think you could give me a little bit of NIL money?
Sure.
Like, I don't think that's a bad idea either. Um, it's just there's just so many opinions out there. I mean, my opinion is I think it's good and bad. There's pros and cons. When you get to the high D1 levels, it's just another world,
Yeah.
back where, D2, mid-major D1, it's a little bit more tame, but you're just seeing a lot of turnover. It's hard to keep a team together. So you're pretty much paying for rosters at this point if you want to win.
Yeah. Do you think coaches nowadays, almost have to become more like detached from having a emotional relationship with players? Do you think they almost have to become numb to seeing players say goodbye, no matter, the relationship that you have with them or how you treat them while they're in your program? Do you think you just kind of have to turn that off and be able to just recruit a new team every single year? Is that something coaches are going to have to just start doing?
I don't know if they're gonna have to start doing that because like the better relationship you have with your players, whether they're there for 3 years or 1 year, the better your team's probably gonna be. So I think that aspect will still stay. That's a huge thing when you're spending, you know, 4 hours, 5 hours a day with that coach. I think you still have to have that relationship. And I know coaches probably don't. Some coaches probably think that they don't want to have those relationships because they don't want to waste their energy on that. But for me personally, I mean, I would still want to have that relationship, whether they stayed or if they decided to transfer the next year.
Sure. All right. Quick segment here. It is coach's pet peeves. I'm going to give you a situation. I just want you to tell me how you would react and how you feel about it. First one is biggest thing high school players do that drives you crazy.
Oh, this year for our team, it would be some of our passes that we make, just ill-advised passes, you know, not really throwing it across the court, not looking, like jumping in the air, not getting to 2 feet, throwing the ball away. That's just an unforced, especially when there's no pressure. Like an
Sure.
unforced turnover like that, like that's the difference between winning a game and losing a game. But I think this year it was definitely just um passing turnovers that were ill-advised.
Make you lose some hair for sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, makes me want to pull my hair out.
Uh-huh. All right. Worst mistake players make when trying to get recruited. This is a big one. This is something I ask almost all coaches that get on here. What's the biggest mistake a high school player can make when a college coach is in the crowd trying to recruit them?
Oh, body language. Man,
Yeah.
if you have bad body language, I mean, we already touched on that.
Yep.
You don't want a player that you don't want to recruit a player that is going to be head down every time he misses a shot. I mean, that just shows you his mental toughness. You know, if he's worried about missing shots, I mean, imagine what he's going to be like when, he's in practice and things aren't going his way. He's got to be able to handle the adversity. So I think body language is a huge, huge pet peeve for me.
Yeah. To expand on that, I think like it doesn't matter if you could be averaging 25 points a game. You could be up for Mr. Basketball or Gatorade Player of the Year. But if a high level coach comes to a game and watches you pout and have bad body language and yelling at the refs, like they might just cross your name off the list right there and then and just leave the gym. Like I think that's how serious it is when it comes to stuff like that in the recruiting process for sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask for some advice here for younger players, just like I did in the last segment. This is kind of for them. If a Bishop Ryan player asked you how to get recruited, what would you tell them and why?
I have a big, strong opinion on this. I would tell that player that you don't need to go spend all this money depending at which level you want to play. You don't need to go spend a bunch of money on trainers, on AAU programs just to get noticed. If you're good enough, you're going to be recruited.
Hmm.
They will see you and like this, you'll get attention. Now, going and playing AAU, I think is still important, but you don't need to be going and playing AAU in your sixth, seventh, eighth freshman year. Like AAU to me is you've honed in your skills. You're shooting your shots every week in the summer. You're making 1,000 shots, or you're shooting 1,000 shots a day. Like that work is still your foundation. Like you can't stop doing that work because the work you put in during the week is what you're going to get traveling to AAU tournaments.
Yes.
So I think my advice for people trying to get recruited is if you're wanting to play college basketball, the work in the gym with the doors shut is more important to being on the floor in the summers.
Yeah. I do kind of want to branch out off of that, talking about AAU. I know for with my dad being a high school coach, I know a lot of high school coaches have a very strong opinion about AAU because for listeners that don't know, there's high school coaches and then there's AAU in the summer. AAU basically starts right after the high school season gets over, depending on how far you make it in the high school season. And a lot of coaches like to have their players back in town for workouts and even team camps, for example. A lot of high school coaches like to go to team camps, keep their players together for the summer to build chemistry together for the next upcoming season. So there's always kind of you know, I think sometimes high school coaches butt heads with the AAU system, not necessarily the AAU coaches. What are your opinions on your high school guys playing AAU? Are you for it? Are you against it? Does it depend? How do you feel about it?
I think for me, it depends on their commitment. Like if they're going to be committed to that team, like I think that's great.
Yeah.
I had a lot of good times playing AAU. I played on like a good team, I played on a not so good team. Like I had good experiences in both of them. A lot of learning went on during my AAU basketball playing days. But I still think it's just the work you put in. Like I think you still need to be in the workouts with your teams. You need to be going to open gyms in the summer and the weekdays, right? Because like team camps sometimes are on AAU weekends, but you can always go miss an AAU tournament for one team camp. Like we're not going to 5 team camps a year, we're probably going to 2 or 3.
Yep.
Like if you can't make one and you can make two, great. But you might have to sacrifice one AAU tournament to go play with your high school teammates and then also playing with them in the week. Like that would be my ideal situation. That's what I did. Like I never stopped playing with my team in the summer, you know, I never stopped working out with them. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Okay. Last question. Very unserious here. You have one dinner. You get to pick three coaches, dead or alive, that you want to talk to about recruiting, NIL, their philosophies, how they do things. Give me three coaches that you would pick to be at a dinner with.
Mm. Mike Krzyzewski,
Coach K,
I'm a
that's easy.
Duke fan. I would say Alabama coach Nate Yost, right?
Yep, Oates, Nate Oates, that's a good one.
Nate Oates, because I think he's a portal legend.
Yeah,
And then, oh gosh, honestly, like not because he's like an NIL guy, but just Tom Izzo, man.
yeah.
Like I think
The
he's
old
awesome.
school, bring
Yeah,
some old school to the table. Yeah,
everything about him, I think that he's just a great coach, even though he's a Michigan State guy. I think he does it the right way.
yep,
But I kind of got a good blend there. You got the Duke guy, you got Coach K,
Yep.
And he's kind of on both sides of the spectrum. He gets the one and dones, but he's also been there for a long time. Then you have the old vet, Tom
Yep.
Izzo. He is just solid on his beliefs. And then you have Nate Oates, and he's all in the portal, man.
Yep. Yep. No, I think that's a good mix there. That'd be a pretty good dinner. But all right, Ben, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. Always a pleasure talking to you and to get your insight as a player, as a coach. I'm glad you made that transition to keep basketball in your life because I know it's a big part of who you are. But look forward to staying in touch and keeping up with the Bishop Ryan Lions this next year, and hopefully you guys can win another state championship like you did 2 years ago. So best of luck. I appreciate you having coming on.
All right, thanks, Connor. Have a good one.